speakers that we have here, the OST-R Transportation Innovation Series that we've been doing for the past several years. So thank you for joining us. I know many folks are visiting with us electronically since we are in the midst of a snow day or second day of a snow day here in the Washington, D.C. area. So thank you for joining us. Today we have the pleasure of hosting Dr. Sean Barbeau of the University of South Florida from the Cutter organization. That's the Center for Urban Transportation Research, one of our proud UTCs here that we've had a relationship with for several years, and they do wonderful work down in the Tampa area. Dr. Sean Barbeau is the principal mobile software architect for R&D at the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida. He has served as the principal investigator for many research projects investigating intelligent software systems for mobile phones, including the Travel Assistance Device, the TAD, and the One Bus Away Multi-Region project. Dr. Barbeau has 14 patented inventions and several more in the queue in the area of location-aware technology and over 40 peer-reviewed papers and conference presentations. In addition, Sean served as a member of an international expert group which developed a Java-based software standard for location-aware mobile phones. He holds a BS and an MS in computer science, as well as a PhD in computer science and engineering from the University of South Florida. So not only is he a product of that fine institution, he is a member of their academic staff and faculty. A little bit of personal information. Sean is married with a 3-year-old son and is expecting another son in April. So he's going to have his hands full. So this location technology very well may apply to his growing brood. In his spare time, he enjoys going on various types of adventures with his family. And as he said, with a 3-year-old, everything is an adventure. But he's also involved with music production, home improvement projects, and hacking together useful things, especially mobile apps. Today's presentation discusses the multidisciplinary innovation process at the University of South Florida, including research funded by the National Center for Transit Research, UTC, and the Florida Department of Transportation, that, as I mentioned, has resulted in 14 patents on location-aware mobile technology and resulted in the deployment, which is important, of real-world systems. Now, as you know, here at the department, we are preparing for the data tsunami. So hopefully, Sean will have some pointers and perspectives that help us ride that wave to the shore rather than being inundated. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Barbeau to the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Thank you very much. So today I'll be talking a little bit about a few different research projects, just highlighting a few of the many that we've worked on over the years, and then talk a little bit about how we work on these types of projects, how we generate ideas, and how we've been able to translate some of that work into patents and then real-world deployments as well. So just to give kind of a broader context of the opportunities that we have today, and these are opportunities that have really just emerged over the last 10 years, and primarily mobile devices. So as of late 2014, 97% of US households have mobile phones, and that's about 5.2 connected devices for the average household. Smartphones accounted for 66% of the total market in 2014, which makes mobile apps available to those types of phones. And that's estimated to increase to 9 out of 10 phones in 2018. So we're talking about 90% of the market having access to mobile apps through smartphones. The mobile app usage in general was up 76% in 2014. So people are using apps, Facebook, YouTube, Gmail, whatever other types of applications there are. And then finally, as far as some of our research goes, one of the main opportunities we have is that we have the National Center for Transit Research at Cutter at USF. And this UTC is focused on public transportation and other modes that are not single occupancy vehicle. And that tends to fit very well with the concept of a mobile device. If you're in a single occupancy vehicle, you can have an in-car navigation system, entertainment information system, If you're taking the bus or bike, walk, any other type of transportation mode, your mobile device is really the main thing that you have that can give you information. So the 3 different projects I'm going to talk about were an attempt to address 3 separate problems that we saw. So the first was to increase rider independence via fixed route transit. And the project I'm going to talk about is a travel assistance device, or TAD as it became known. The second was to assess the impact of real-time bus arrival information on bus riders. And that's linked to the One Bus Away project, which I'll talk about. And then the third project here is collecting multimodal data to support community-based social marketing. So this is helping us to understand, have a better understanding of how people travel from one place to another. And then how can we give them information and feedback that can help them improve their travel patterns, save them time and money, and reduce congestion. So the first problem that we were looking at, so exiting the bus at the right place and the right time. This is one of the hardest of the 23 skills that's necessary to use public transportation. And in particular, the problem we were looking to solve for this was those with some type of intellectual impairments. So the individual has some type of impairment that prevents them from using the quick decision-making process necessary to say, there's my upcoming bus stop. It's time for me to pull the cord or push the button, request the vehicle to stop, and then exit the transit vehicle. And we talked with travel trainers. So travel trainers are individuals that transit agencies employ to help teach people how to use public transportation. And this is really work with Mark Shepard from HART in Tampa as part of this project. And this was really the skill that he said he spends the most amount of time with people. They'll capture most of the other skills pretty quickly, but it may take them 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And some people never really quite get it. And roughly 90% of his trainees that he works with have some type of intellectual impairment. Another related problem for the agency is that paratransit is very expensive. So the door-to-door paratransit service, if an individual can't independently ride fixed route public transportation, they'll wind up on paratransit. So the agencies are really the ones that put most of the bill for this, and it ends up being very expensive. It's about 10 times the cost per trip versus the normal fixed route transit if that same person is able to ride the normal bus. And then also from a rider's perspective, paratransit limits the independence and the spontaneity of travel. So there's some riders that really want to use fixed route transit, but they can't quite get to that, over that hump of the real-time process of identifying their stop and getting off the bus. So we were working with mobile technology at the time, and we thought we could help address this. And so we built a mobile app that was originally the Travel Assistance Device, or TAD. The acronym kind of stuck, even though it's an app. This was in the early days of mobile devices. And this mobile application tells the traveler to get ready and to pull the cord now when it's time to exit the vehicle. So you can think of this kind of like the step-by-step navigation that you get in a car, but on a cell phone. And also specifically designed to be very simple to use and give very simple instructions. And as you see on the left-hand side, a travel trainer or a parent or the individual themselves, if they're able to, can go to a website and set up a trip. So they can travel from home to work or whatever other type, home to the mall, any other type of trip. They see basic information such as the head sign. So 18 Livingston West here, so they get on the correct bus. A countdown till their destination, and then they receive the audio and visual, and the phone vibrates when it's time for them to exit the transit vehicle. So to evaluate this, we wanted to, we successfully proved the technology could work in a proof of concept. That was one of the first steps. So could we actually do this? At the time, we were using flip phones. Could we actually do this with today's flip phones? Is GPS accurate enough? There's a lot of things that go into this from a technology perspective. And after we showed that it was possible, we wanted to evaluate, well, how does this actually affect the people that would be using it? So we partnered with the USF Florida Mental Health Institute and Hillsborough Area Regional Transit in Tampa. And we did a small-scale experiment with FMHI that is used to doing these types of small-scale experiments. And there's a way to design those to make sure that the stimulus, in this case, the application, is actually effective in terms of telling them when to get off the bus. So we evaluated it with 3 individuals with moderate intellectual impairments and looked at specifically Does this help them request the stop to exit the vehicle at the right place? And does this help the vehicle actually or the person actually getting off the vehicle at the right place? We had an AB experimental design, so we had the rider travel public transportation without the application, then gave them the application, see how it works, took it away, and gave it back again. And that's to make sure that the application is actually having the effect and not some other factors. We also had safeguards in place, so we didn't want to just put an individual with moderate intellectual impairments on the vehicle and see what happens. So we had some people kind of undercover who were there to help if needed, but the individual didn't know that they were there. So the results were great. When no prompts were given, so without the application, all the subjects failed to pull the stop record and exit the bus to the correct location. So this was actually the problem that we were trying to solve. When the application was used, the subject was able to pull the stop request cord and exit the vehicle at the correct location. So the data was absolutely perfect. It was top and bottom. There was no in between at all. One of the other common questions we get is, well, why do we need this? Can't the rider just ask the bus driver and have the bus driver tell them when to get off the bus? And there's a number of reasons why that's not a good idea. One is bus drivers tend to rotate. You might not always have the same bus driver. Two, the bus driver's primary responsibility is to drive the bus safely, not to yell out stops. And we actually saw this as part of our experiment. One of the riders without the application asked the bus driver for help. The bus driver was good intentioned, but actually gave them wrong directions, and they got off the bus at the wrong place. So that kind of proved the point that we and some of the travel trainers were trying to make is, just asking the bus driver for help isn't good enough. We need some other type of technology to help. So as part of this, we had 2 patents that were granted in 2012, both on the system design and concept, as well as the specific algorithm that we use to track GPS in real time and make sure we alert the transit rider at the exact right place and time. We also had a number of endorsements by those closest to the problem, and this is a quote from Mark Shepard at HART. Saying, implementing the TAD in the hands of our trainees will not only help reduce the amount of time dedicated to each trainee, but it will open the door to many more trainees. And we're not doing this, we don't want to put people on the bus that aren't ready. But again, it's just trying to target that one problem of Mark spending 2 to 3 weeks of his time with somebody who's almost there, but just not quite. We think this technology, along with travel training, can make a pretty big difference. So the next steps that we want to look at for this project is identifying other partnerships and grants to adapt the TAD application to other populations. This is something that we've heard a lot from people with visual impairments, seniors, tourist visitors. We had one woman who's in a wheelchair tell us that a lot of the times when they secure her wheelchair, she's actually not able to see out the window to know when her stop is coming up. So we think this could be useful for individuals in wheelchairs as well. We're going to continue collaboration with USF, the Florida Mental Health Institute, for evaluations. We've also heard from the Veteran Administration that this could really help returning veterans that have traumatic brain injuries. They also end up with multiple disabilities, and trying to manage all of those and communicate this information in an effective way, I think is an open area. And then USF's Patents and Licensing is actively pursuing licensing opportunities. So if there is anyone interested in commercializing this, please let me know. So I'll jump to the next project here. So when we were working on some of the other transit information projects, there was a project out of Seattle and the University of Washington that caught our eye. And this was called One Bus Away. And One Bus Away is a suite of tools that provides real-time bus or train tracking information. So One Bus Away was originally deployed in Seattle, and it was started by a few grad students that wanted to pursue this. First, just had an interest in the area and then wanted to pursue this as part of their graduate work. And it quickly grew just by word of mouth and being a really useful tool of telling you when the bus was going to arrive to over 100,000 unique weekly users. And as of today in Seattle, it's still a massive, you walk up to a bus stop, you'll see 1 or 2 people using One Bus Away. And so the motivation behind this was to make public transit easier by providing good real-time information in a readily usable format. So websites are great, but not really the best way to access information while you're like standing at a stop or on the go. So delivering these via mobile applications, it was a first priority, and then also looking at some research. Since University of Washington built One Bus Away, they were able to do some research surrounding that to better understand what this type of information, what the access to this type of information did in terms of people's travel behavior and their perceptions of transit. How does this actually affect riders? So this mobile application, One Bus Away, is available on a number of different platforms from Android, iPhone, Windows Phone, and Windows 8. And this, again, just having the ability to access this information on pretty much any smartphone platform that's out there makes it readily accessible to almost anyone with a smartphone. So one of the problems that we were looking to address was with the, in some cities, transit applications aren't as prevalent. So in Seattle, the One Bus Away transit application just exploded and people started using it. In other cities, you don't really see that. There aren't these third-party applications that just emerge. And this typically happens to occur in cities that don't have software engineers or very high-income people that are educated to actually create these types of applications. Those people are not using public transportation. So we wanted to see if we could replicate the success of One Bus Away in a new city and leverage. One Bus Away is actually entirely open source software. So this is an entire suite of software that includes both server software, mobile applications for iPhone, Android, Windows Phone. And if you had to develop all that from scratch, it would cost a lot of money. So how can we replicate the success of One Bus Away in other cities? And this was a project that we participated in and led in the One Bus Away community. So at the bottom you see where this design started. So again, this is just the University of Washington One Bus Away server, and each application, when you went and downloaded the app from the App Store, started it up on your phone, you'd see Seattle information. So we wanted to change that so that One Bus Away would be available in multiple cities, but do that in a way where it was still very simple for the rider. They go to the One Bus Away application in the App Store, download it, and then see information for their area. So we came up with this design of a multi-region architecture. So we actually modified all the mobile apps, the iPhone, Android, and Windows Phone, and changed them so that instead of just locking onto a single server when they start up, we created this centralized directory of available regions. So when you fire up the app on your phone, it'll check and see, okay, is there a region available in your city? And if so, it'll then latch on to that particular server and work with that set of information. So if I start up the app while I'm in Tampa, I'll see Tampa real-time information. If I start it up while I'm in Seattle, I'll see Seattle real-time information. And so this is nice because it allows each region to independently manage their own servers. So for example, in Puget Sound, Sound Transit is the one that's managing that server. So they're fully responsible for that and providing information for their area. And then in Tampa, Hillsborough Area Hillsborough Area Regional Transit, or HART, is responsible for managing Tampa's real-time information. So it lets each agency worry about their own information, but still leverage the same set of mobile applications, which would be very costly to develop from scratch. And probably most importantly, we created this so it was very easy to plug in new cities. So if you want to join One Bus Away and start using the One Bus Away apps in your city, you just set up a One Bus Away server. That software is open source and there's instructions to do that. And then I just join this multi-region architecture. We add you to the list of servers and regions, and then magically there's transit apps for your city. So as part of this project, the first city to launch with this multi-region concept was Tampa. So we led the Tampa deployment just to prove that this type of design was possible. We also wanted to evaluate, Tampa was unique because there was no public-facing real-time transit information before this project. So we had a unique opportunity to do a controlled experiment where we had some people that had access to One Bus Away as kind of an early access pilot, and then some just regular riders that didn't yet have access to the system. We did a set of surveys, and this was led by Dr. Candace Breakwood and Carrie Watkins, who were both at Georgia Tech at the time. And the objective for this was to evaluate the impact of the real-time information on the transit rider in a controlled experiment. So we ended up doing before and after web-based surveys. So we have the control group, which you see at the top. So both before and after, they did not have one bus away. And then the experimental group did not have one bus away before we added one bus away, and then we surveyed them to see what the resulting impact was. So for the one bus away Tampa, the results were, the biggest outcome was significant improvements in the waiting time. And this intuitively makes sense. If you're standing at a bus stop just waiting for the bus to show up, it feels longer than it actually is, just with the uncertainty of everything. So we found decreases in the self-reported usual wait times by about 2 minutes. And we saw a decrease in negative feelings, in particular frustration, while the users waiting for the bus. So those that had access to one bus away just were less frustrated in general. And we also saw increases in satisfaction with the wait times in general. So people felt better about waiting for the bus. And from a transit agency's perspective, this can be very cost effective versus actually increasing frequency, which is the other main way to improve the rider experience. There's some other research ongoing in this area looking at does real-time affect ridership? And so far in another study in New York City, they found that yes, it actually does. So by deploying real-time information, you can actually add riders to the transit system, or at least have additional trips. Some of the other research that we're looking at is issue reporting and rider feedback. So how can we better leverage this information? When we deployed one bus away, we knew we were going to be giving information to riders. I don't think we realized we were going to get as much feedback back as we ended up getting. So we're looking at ways to harness that so the agency can address different issues, whether it's a broken bench at a bus stop or a route that's continuously running late. We want to deliver this information in a format to the transit agency that is easy to leverage. So I'll switch gears again and talk about another project that we've worked on called Track It. And the motivation behind this, again, was to have a way to capture better information about how people are moving from point A to point B, and then also be able to deliver information back to them that may change their travel behavior. So some of the early work that we did was to install an app on a mobile phone and just collect as much GPS data as we could. And now this was great from a data perspective. If you're looking at for one particular user's trip, and this is actually one of my trips here. So the very frequent sampling every 4 seconds gives us a very precise path. We know the distance that was traveled, origin destination pairs. You can even calculate average speeds or speeds at particular points. And the way that we design this is pretty much like a travel diary, where we have a passive mode, which is just recording GPS data. And then we have more like a traditional travel survey mode where we have an active collection. So we ask the user, what was the purpose of your trip? Or how did you get here by bus or car or bike or walk? So this is great, except for we had 2 major problems. The first was battery life. So every time when you turn GPS on your phone, and a lot of people that use apps a lot on their phone realize this, GPS chews through your battery energy pretty quickly. And if you're collecting this much data and sending it back to a server, that means that you're also sending a lot of data, which then burns more energy. So we can solve these problems really easily by just ramping down the sampling rate. But then we don't get the data that we originally wanted. So we see very sparse collection of data. And this doesn't really give us things like path, distance traveled, origin destination, or average speed, which is what we wanted. So early on, before we could actually implement these types of applications, we realized that there was kind of a fundamental problem here we had to address. So the first thought that we had was, well, instead of just turning GPS on constantly, what if we only sample GPS while the user is moving? And so this would reduce the amount of energy, so we're only have GPS active when the user's actually moving around. The problem then is detecting whether the user is actually moving or not. And on the right-hand side of this screen, you see GPS data collected while the user's in one location. And you can see it's kind of bouncing all over the place, and there's a lot of error there. So early on, we were kind of treating this as two different states. Is the user moving? If so, we'll sample every 4 seconds. If not, then we'll sample every 5 minutes. The problem is with this noise, we end up switching back and forth between the states a lot, and then your GPS ends up on most of the day anyways, and this doesn't really solve the problem. So what we ended up doing is treating this instead of just kind of dual or binary states. We turned this into a state machine. So on the left-hand side, we have 4-second sampling. So that's while the user's moving, we sample very quickly. On the other extreme, the right-hand side, is when the user is not moving, we'll only sample GPS, say, every 5 minutes. And then the trick is, how do we transition? So as we start moving to the right, we gradually start turning down the sampling rate, and as we move to the left, we start increasing it. So if I'm standing still and on the right, and we see data that we think we're moving, we'll move 1 step to the left. And then if we think we're still moving after the next sample, we'll move again. And we start building certainty as we move from one side to the other. And we found that this actually works pretty well. And so our goal is then to wind up in the 4-second sampling rate while the user's moving, and then wind up in the 5-minute sampling rate while the user's stopped. So we kind of get the best of both worlds and gradually transition based on the certainty of the data. So we did a lot of testing on this as part of our Track It application. We found out that this actually works pretty well. After a lot of tweaking, we wound up with about 88% mean accuracy in state tracking, meaning we were actually frequently sampling when the user's moving and not frequently sampling when they're stopped. And we also found pretty significant increases in battery life and roughly doubling battery life using this particular technique. So we were awarded a patent on this particular design. The other thing that we noticed was that, if we have GPS on and we're collecting a lot of data, we're also sending a lot of that data to the server. As I mentioned before, that burns battery life. So what we noticed was that as we were collecting data, there was a lot of redundant data in that information. So for example, all these points here that we see that are being grayed out, you can really just skip those and connect the rest of the dots with a line. If you temporarily stop, you can filter out some of those points. So we pulled this is kind of an advancement of, in the geographic information systems world, there's a concept of line simplification. So we took that and adapted it to actually run in real time on the cell phone. So instead of transmitting every single GPS point we're collecting, we're only sending the points that we really need to reconstruct the user's path. And we found, again, with this technique, about an average reduction of 77% of the data. So we don't really need that data. It's just redundant information. That saves us about almost 20 kilobytes per trip, which adds up when you're talking about massive data collection over a large number of devices. The error rate, we had a way to measure the error for this technique, which was satisfactory. And we found that as the amount of time between transmissions to the server doubles, your battery life doubles as well. So we were able to see pretty good battery life savings as part of this technique. So actually using this in a real research project. So there was a USDOT value pricing project that we worked on at USF. And this was measuring the spatial patterns of car sharing users. So this was the Enterprise WeCar, I believe it was named. It's kind of like a zip car type service. We want to understand how people were actually using this. So we used the Track It mobile phone. We had 30 participants, and we collected about 40 days of travel behavior data per participant. And since the phone is constantly sending us data back, we can actually just do an indefinite deployment. We don't have to recollect the devices to get the data off of them. So given the time and the funding, this could have actually extended to a full year or more. We also, since we were getting the data back in real time, we sent daily emails to users so they could see their data in Google Earth and then comment back, say, yeah, this looked good, or no, this is bad data. And we also, they sent us a surprising amount of information that we were able to extract to then label mode and that type of thing as well. So the results that we saw here was that car sharing users have a smaller activity space than non-car sharing users. So kind of make the assumption a lot of the non-car sharing users have cars, so they're able to drive further than the individuals without car sharing. But what we also saw is that the activity space of car sharing users contracts while using car sharing, which makes sense because they're paying for the service. So they might be riding in their other non-car sharing trips, they may be riding with a friend, in which case they kind of visit all different parts of Tampa. But if they're paying to use a car sharing service, they want to make that trip to and from their destination as fast as they can and as directed as they can. And we also saw this in looking at the travel behavior data. We used a measurement called the standard deviation ellipse, so looking at their travel footprint. And it tends to be this kind of elongated trip for the car sharing trips. So again, very directed to their destination and then immediately back to return the car. So these are things that we really only could understand using something like Track It that gives us much better data. So now that I covered all three of the projects, I'll talk just generally about our problem-solving approach and how we approach some of these issues at USF. So all of these projects they're multidisciplinary in terms of my background is computer science, and we work with other faculty who have a civil engineering background. We also have a strong relationship with the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. And a lot of these projects, actually nearly all the projects, students, both undergraduate and graduate, work with us on these projects. So that's great because it's a constant injection of new techniques that are being learned in classes, and that translates to our work and then the output of the project. We have various brainstorming meetings where we'll just get together and toss ideas out, and some of them are really crazy and not that good, but others end up being, I think, pretty successful research projects. We tend to target real-world problems with solutions that aren't yet commercially available. So we don't really want to duplicate something that already exists out there, but target something new. One of the other things that I think contributes to our focus is that Qatar is completely contract and grant funded. So we can't work on really kind of pie-in-the-sky ideas unless somebody's willing to fund that research. So we're very highly motivated to continue working on practical problems that someone is willing to pay for to find a solution. And we're also focused then on always thinking about what the next project will be. So as we're working on one project, thinking what will be the next project that we work on. And I think that focuses and makes us think more about translating what we're currently working on to the next steps going forward. And something else we try to do is leverage existing or soon to exist commercially available mobile devices. So try to target devices that actually already exist in the real world. So we know they're going to be available to the general public. But so we don't have to create any hardware for these solutions. It's just software, mobile apps that you can install on mobile phones that exist on the market. So we've generated 14 patents to date. I talked about a few of those earlier. If you're really interested in digging in at the full list, there's a link there. So I'll talk a little bit about software tech transfer. So once we actually do the research, we generate and show that some solutions solve real-world problems. What's the next step? And the next step is for that technology to somehow be transferred out of the university and the research setting into the real world. So there's really two approaches that we've looked at and been part of over the last, I guess, about 10 years. The first is patents and licensing. So this is your kind of traditional university creates something, they patent it, and then license it to a commercial entity. So the pros for this approach is that if a company has exclusive rights to a technology, they may be more led to invest in that technology. They know they have anyone who's going to purchase that product or use that service has to come to them to do that. From a university perspective, it also creates revenue for the university. From a con perspective, you have to identify and contract with a licensee. And depending on the technology, this can be challenging. You really need to find the right company in the right place and the right time. And we've been successful in generating, I believe it's about 5 or 6 licenses to 2 different companies. But again, it was really just the right place, the right time. And that can be really challenging to accomplish. The other con is that this process can be slow. It can take a very long time to go from an idea to a patent to a license. In our experience, from when we filed a patent for some of the technologies, it's roughly 3 to 6 years for the patent to be issued by the US Patent and Trademark Office. And then that doesn't count the actual license that product out to the private sector either. So it can be a very drawn out process. So the other approach that we've looked at is open source software, and in particular with One Bus Away and another project called Open Trip Planner, which I'll talk about briefly. So the pros of this approach is that you just share the source code for your software to the world. So literally the click of a button, it uploads to a website, and then everybody else can go use it and access it. The pros to this approach is, yeah, it's fast and it's also open. So people that you don't know can stumble on your software and your source code, and that can generate and start new collaborations and funding opportunities as well. The cons are there's no licensing revenue for the university for actually licensing technology to a commercial sector company, but it can generate, as I mentioned earlier, funding opportunities through grants and other contracts. The other con is that the private sector may be slower to invest in a technology due to the lack of exclusivity. So it's something that's high risk, and the company knows that everyone else has access to the same technology. They may not be as likely to deploy that. So looking at open source software, and then the question is, if you're going to go down that route, what license do you choose? And there's myriad licenses for open source software. My personal opinion is that Apache version 2 offers the most freedom of use. So this is one of the license that is freely to use to the private sector. If the private sector wants to pick up a software project and run with it, they don't have to worry about being sued by the university later for some patent that's hidden inside the source code, and they don't have to be worried about releasing their own software as source code either. So it's very private sector friendly. And this actually is an issue in universities as well, because if we're working on a project and we're working on looking at open source software that does not allow this and requires you to release your own source code, it can generate intellectual property issues at universities as well. And then there's sites such as GitHub, which offers social code sharing and collaboration. So that allows other people to find your software and to create their own copy and then collaborate and improve the project. So 2 examples of open source tech transfer is the One Bus Away project that I mentioned earlier. So we worked on the One Bus Away pilot in Tampa in 2013. In between actually even before we ended that project to 2014, we saw the same software pop up in at least 4 different cities: Atlanta, York in Canada, Washington, DC, and then Bear Transit at UC Berkeley. And there's 3 different vendors involved with supporting and deploying the technology. And I believe that's at least in part because of the friendliness. The software is under the Apache license, so the vendor doesn't have to worry as much about being forced to release their own software when they work with One Bus Away. And then MTA in New York City actually leveraged the One Bus Away software for their bus time system as well. So you don't see the brand One Bus Away on there because they decided to brand it as their own bus time service, but it's still One Bus Away under the hood. A second example here is Open Trip Planner for Android. And this was an application that we created based on the Open Trip Planner project, and just initially did it as a tech demo. But other people saw it and then became interested in it, and we actually ended up generating funding via the Google Summer of Code. We had a student that was interested in working on it, and then we talked with Google and was able to get him funding to further the application. And this is actually now deployed in 5 different countries in 10 different cities around the world, and people have translated it on their own into 3 different languages. So this was all things that just kind of happened organically after we shared the software. So I think the overall conclusions for this that I want to leave you with, so mobile devices offer many opportunities and many challenges. I think that we've shown that multidisciplinary collaboration yields innovation. mixing computer science and civil engineering, I think leads to some great things. And the tech transfer for software, there's two different paths, patents and licensing versus open source software. And I think you really need to consider your goals and what you want to accomplish when choosing your path. So with that, thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions. Yes, there's a mic there too, I guess, if people wouldn't mind stepping up so people online can hear the question.
So with the open source model that you talked about, what happens when there's already a product out there that that is being used competitively, and then we have the open source one? So does the old one get adapted? Does it just incorporate that, or do they lose all their business?
That's a good question, and I think it really depends what type of an advancement the new open source software is. So it's very much a survival of the fittest, I think, in the way that business in the United States tends to work. So the new business can look to adopt the new technology, or either on top of their old software or in place of. If they don't, then there's the threat of somebody else coming along and then offering a similar product or a competing product that could potentially put them out of business. But I think actually the Android operating system is another example of this, where smartphone ecosystem was kind of stalled, and Google wanted to motivate manufacturers to get over the hump of lack of innovation, and they kind of dropped the bomb of Android, and then everybody else clamored around it, and you now have companies like Samsung, HTC, Motorola that are using that software and still producing very good products, and they chose to adapt their model to leverage that software, and others didn't, and they're no longer in business. So I think it's a way to spur innovation that keeps the private sector moving forward. Is there other questions?
Thanks for the presentation. I just would like to consider the future. This smart mobility area is going to be huge in the coming decades. Where do you see things going, the trends? What are the things to look out for at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely, I think the pace of innovation in terms of mobile devices keeps increasing. I think the things we see on the horizon, or not even the horizon, I guess they're here now. So wearables, smartwatches, smart glasses in some form, things like Google Glass. I think that's the things we'll see next. They'll, I think, create a revolution in that they'll give us very quick and easy access to information. So those wearables, I think, are, my opinion is they're designed to replace the interaction where you grab your phone out of your bag or pocket, look at it for less than 30 seconds, then put it back in. Gives you very quick access to information. But on the other hand, I think a lot of applications have to be redesigned in that context as well. So it's not always easy to give people bite-sized information that's very easy and quick to digest. And actually requires a lot of intelligence from a computer science standpoint as well, to understand the context that the user is in and only deliver information that's useful at the right place and the right time. So I think leveraging location, that plays a huge role in understanding where a person is and what information would be useful to them. Mentioned the big data problem. I think trying to wrap your hands around this information, if we're getting 4-second GPS trails, all opt-in, we're not tracking people without their knowledge. But if we're getting all this data, it's very challenging to turn that data into information that's useful. And there's some efforts in big data that are looking at that as well. But definitely, I think, an open area going forward and rich for research. Is there other questions?
No questions have come in online.
No questions online?
No questions online.
Sure. Thank you.
So thanks again to Dr. Sean Barbeau for visiting with us here at US DOT for a very informative discussion on location-aware apps and the technologies of the future. There's certainly more to come, and I'm happy to say that while I was sitting there, I downloaded one bus away, so I appreciate that. Now I'll know when the circulator's coming, so that's a big, big benefit. So again, please join us next month. On March 18, we'll have a presentation on connected motorcycle crash warning interfaces, certainly something that is near and dear to my heart as an avid motorcyclist. Dr. Zachary Duzaf from the University of Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, VTTI, another one of our world-class UTCs, will be here visiting with us. So again, March 18, we look forward to seeing you all back then. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.